Hey everyone, Rico here. Wanted to make a movie on the process that I went through in configuring and installing one of the more challenging platforms into Launchbox, which is Daphne. And my hopes in this video is just to make things a heck of a lot easier for those of you guys who may either be struggling to try to get Daphne into Launchbox or are thinking about wanting to get Daphne into Launchbox. I'm hoping that this video will make it a heck of a lot easier for you to go through and make it much faster than what I had to go through to create this kind of process to make it very easy to put in, or at least easier to put in. And so one of the things that's going to be an assumption in this whole video is that you already have the ROMs and the video files that are needed for Daphne in order for the games to work. We're not going to cover any of those things. We won't say where to get those. That's for you to know where to get them and to have them. Okay, so with that, let's just kind of jump right into this. And first step is obviously to get the Daphne emulator. So you can go over to the daphne-emu.com website and then click under this download under Windows and click on the zip, and it'll ask you to save the file, which I have already done and saved it right here. And so then what I suggest is that you unzip this guy. I used 7-zip. Just go and unzip it into a folder called emulators/Daphne, and then it'll throw all the files in there. Okay, again, that's emulators/Daphne. And then what we're essentially going to do is we're going to take this whole emulators folder and copy it onto the main Launchbox directory. Okay, it'll just make it a lot easier and streamlined to do. So if you do this step, it'll be ready to go. Okay, so now here are all the files that we've got in the Daphne. Okay, and we're going to need to essentially go into this Daphne loader to start configuring the games. Okay, now under normal Windows, for this, at least for this to work under this loader, you can go through and essentially the whole process is you're going to go through every single one of these games and then configure them. And then once they're all configured, you can come over here and hit that start button and the game will work. Okay. Since we're going to try to get this into Launchbox, this GUI, you can't use in the Launchbox. So we have to essentially load these things up from a command line based. All right. So it's going to be a little bit different. So what the process is still going to be the same though, and that's going to be the most painful part, is that you have to go through every single one of these games to configure them and get them all ready to go. And again, this is quite painful, but it is what needs to happen if you want to get them into Launchbox accordingly. So let's go ahead and just start out with Astron Belt, and we'll just give a quick little tutorial. So when you come in here, you're going to click on configure, and you're going to get this window that's got all these different tabs from the game that you're wanting to select, as far as the versions of it. You've got your laser disc as to where you're going to be pointing your video files to, and then all the little individual game options that are available so that you can modify the experience for the game. So as an example, if you want this to be easier, you can change it. If you want it to be harder, you can go and change that. Any of these little asterisks that you see here, that's just the defaults that are set up, in general for the game. And then anything that's not under the asterisk is what's been changed. All right. Okay. Then we've got the video tab, which is where you're going to be setting up your resolution and everything else that's involved into it. Your audio, your keyboard inputs, and your joystick inputs, and then this advanced tab. Okay. So now that we've gone through, let's say, for example, we're going to go ahead and use this Hitachi version. We need to point to our Laserdisc files. So we're going to change this to no. And then we're going to find where our frame file is located, which in generally tends to be under this VLDP folder. Okay. So now one of the things that I like to do, okay, and before I actually get into this, let me go ahead and cancel this and leave this in the main loading. What I generally like to do is I like to go into this VLDP folder and I like to rename these, and that's just from my own preference. You don't have to do this. It won't affect the functionality of the game, but I do it just so that it's organized whenever I take a look at it. So for Astron Belt, I'm going to go ahead and rename it to Astron Belt. Under Vegas Battle, I'm going to go ahead and change that to Vegas Battle. And I do use the apostrophe. And then for a Cobra command, I'll go ahead and label that Cobra command. Okay, again, you don't have to do this. I do it. Like I said, it just makes it nice and clean and easy. But I do leave everything inside of there the same. Okay, so you should have this. You should have an M2V file, which is going to be where the video files are at. the OGG, which is where the audio file is at, and then the text file, which is the frame file. Okay, so it's just kind of a very brief idea or a brief overview of the structure. So now going back over here to the Astron belt and configure the laser disc. We're going to hit no. We're going to find that frame file, which we should see under VLDP, Astron belt, and then there's our text file. So now we pointed it to there and hit OK. Now that's been associated. Now we can go in here and adjust any of the little settings that we want for the game. So let's say I want this to be 40 seconds instead of 60. Like I said, the difficulty, I changed it to hard. Now we're good to go there. Now under video, okay, the default for full screen is to be disabled. I want it to be enabled so that it fills up the whole screen. Under the screen sizes, your resolution, the default is 640 by 480. My arcade cabinet is under 1600 by 1200, so I'll choose that. And then under hardware acceleration, this YUV hardware overlay is what's defaulted. I prefer the OpenGL. It tends to look better on my system, but I suggest that you just play with these on your own so you can see which one tends to look better or react better. So for my case, I'm going to use OpenGL. Okay, this ignore correct aspect ratio. The game is normally 4 by 3. If you are not bothered and you want it to be stretched to fill up your whole widescreen monitor, you can change this to enable and it'll stretch it out and fill up your whole screen. But for my case, my arcade cabinet is 4 by 3, so I'll leave that there. And then this blank when searching feature, this is one that I really like. The default is enabled, but I changed it to disabled. What this basically is in the original games for the Laserdisc, since they were using optical media, when it went from one video to another, there was a skip or a jump that occurred, in trying to read from one track to another. And when it did that, it kind of had this pause, or there was a little blank as it was moving from one track to the other. Well, with obviously the way that we're looking at it here, we don't have an optical media anymore. We've got a video file that has it. So if you disable this, you essentially eliminate that pausing and everything is just nice and smooth and clean. So for myself, I prefer to have it disabled, but if you want to really have the pausing, it gives you a nostalgic effect, more like the Laserdisc, then you can leave this unenabled and it'll have that little pause that goes through. Okay, everything else I keep pretty much on the defaults. I wish I could turn on the scanline effect because I do like some of these older games like that to have the scanline so it simulates more of a CRT effect. But the effect for the scanlines under the Daphne, for my own personal preference, it's just not very good. So I just prefer to leave it disabled. Okay, under audio, I leave everything under defaults, no reason to change anything. Under inputs, this is where you put in all your keyboard commands if you want to change them. Under buttons, there's actually options to assign for the buttons if you've got an arcade stick. But this is actually almost like another video to discuss and how to set up these input files because it's not completely straightforward. So maybe I'll cover that in a different video. All right, and then under this advanced tab, what we're going to be looking for is this display command line and enable that. And normally it's disabled. Okay, what this is the magic sauce that we're going to be using to make all this thing work under Launchbox. So we're going to hit OK. All right, so like I said in the Windows version, once we have all this thing set up and I hit start, it should just start playing. Since we're doing Launchbox, we need to have a command line. That is what that little feature right here is for, is so that whenever I come in and I hit the start button, it's going to show me the entire command string that is going to be needed to play that game. And this is what we're going to utilize in a batch file to essentially load up all these individual games. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put these files into the description of this video so that you've got them and you don't have to really recreate them. So what we've got is we've got a batch file, and then I've got this folder that has these dummy files with names on them, and we'll go over these in just a little bit. Okay, so like I said, I'll leave both of these in the description. So let's go ahead and take a look at this batch file that I created. So if we go to edit, okay, you're going to see that I've got all the names of the games here. And let me just kind of give you a quick little overview of how this is going to work. And I'm going to go ahead and do this side by side here with the loader. Okay, so when we're using the batch file, what we're essentially needing to do is we're needing to pass some kind of a variable right here next to this batch, and that's what this %1 is for. Okay, so in an essence, let me kind of show you what that's going to look like in a run command. So it'll be something like this. It'll be launchbox, oops, launchbox underscore loader dot bat, and then it'll be something like this %1. Okay, but what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to replace this %1 with some value so that it knows what to call and execute. Okay, so essentially what we're wanting to do, let's say we want to load up Astron's belt. We want to be able that %1 to look something like Astron belt. Okay, and usually in Windows, the quotes just means that it needs to consider that as a whole statement rather than individual parts of the statement. So if you've got a space in between, it'll read this entirely rather than reading Astron and then belt, completely separately. Okay, so now we have launchbox underscore loader dot bat with this Astron belt. And that's essentially what we're wanting to do. When you pass that parameter like that, it uses these values to check. So if it detects that it sees Astron belt like this, then it says, hey, go to this location that says Astron belt, and that's denominated by this colon. So now it goes to this location and then executes this command right here. And then once you finish playing, it essentially finishes and goes to this go to end, which at the very bottom goes to nothing, and so it exits the game. Okay. So this is more or less what we had to do, and as you can see, I had to create every single one of those for every one of the games. Okay, so essentially, here's how it comes down to, is now you've got your batch file that you've downloaded, and you've put this into the main Daphne emulation folder, right? And you're also going to want to put this launchbox loader. Okay, so what we're essentially doing, and again, let me actually jump first into the command line, and then we'll discuss this loaders folder. Okay, so what we're essentially doing is just like you saw, we configured the Astron belt, and we've got that show me that command line. So then now when I come in here and I hit start, I can say copy to clipboard, minimize this, and then find that entry right here that I've got under Astron belt and highlight the whole thing, and then paste it and replace it. And now these are all the values that I've set up under that particular game. And so what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go through every single one of these, do the exact same thing where you're displaying the command line, and then once you hit your start, you're going to have to copy that to the clipboard and then come down to your next statement, like let's say, Vega's over here, and paste that in there. Okay, so I'm going to go through one of these really quick so you can see kind of the process, and I'm going to, like I said, fly through it. Let's say I'm going to change biggest battle. Okay, so I'm going to come into here to configure. I'm going to go over to the games. Let's say that I want to use revision 1. I'm going to go ahead and find where my frame file is at. So I will look under my VLDP, go to biggest battle. There's my frame file, hit OK. And then I'm going to make some adjustments here. I want 6 lives instead of, the 3. I want to make this difficult, and that's good enough. And then for the video, I'm going to change that to a full screen enabled. I'm going to put it under the resolution for my cabinet, 1600 by 1200. I'm going to change the acceleration to opengl, and I'm going to change the blank when searching to disabled. Leave the audio the same, leave the input the same, go to advanced, change my command line to enabled, and then now I can run biggest battle. Here's my command, copy that, minimize this, go over to biggest battle, highlight the whole command here, and then paste it. Okay, so there's kind of the whole process that you'll have to go through every single one of these. And like I said, this is by far the most painful part of this whole process, but once it's done, and you don't have to worry about it again. The cool part that this whole process does is that if later on you want to make some adjustments, okay, through this whole process, you can with this command. Okay, well, what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to go ahead and do a breakdown of this command line so that you can see more or less essentially what's happening. Let's go ahead and use Astron belt since we've already got it. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and paste it to a notepad. Okay, so here's more or less what's happening, and let's fire up this. So if you look here, you're calling the Daphne emulator, which is located in the main Daphne folder. And then this parameter right here is telling it which game it needs to load, which in this case is Astron Belt. Here's that virtual Laserdisc frame file that it's trying to look for and the path that you've pointed it to. Here's some of the other features and functions that are tied to that blank skipping. Here we've got the home directory folder that essentially it wants to know where is this Daphne executable located. Okay, and then right here under the banks, let me screw this over, right here under bank 0 and bank 1, these are all the little values between 0 and 1 that are what define the game options, right? So we've made some adjustments here to like the player timer and the difficulty, right? So those are probably some of the delimited, markers right here where they're by 1. Okay. So you've got your bank, and then you've got your sound buffer file that's related to that audio. And then we've got the full screen that's been enabled. We've got the resolution that we decided, and then the OpenGL overlay that I decided to put in. So this is essentially what's calling up that whole game. All right. Okay, so that's essentially what we're doing for every single one of these, so that whenever it finds the name, it goes to that particular location and runs that executable. Okay, now in order to do that in Launchbox, we are going to need to fool it into trying to pass that %1 right here next to it. And the way that we do that is we're essentially creating these dummy files with the names of the games. And you can see that there's 0k values, and so all that there basically are, and the way that I did them is I created a text file. Let's say this is like Mortal Kombat, and then I just deleted the extension so that it's basically no extension and it's blank. Okay, let me go ahead and delete that. So we created these dummy files, and these are the dummy files that we're going to import into Launchbox as ROMs, so that whenever it comes down to telling Launchbox how to load this, you're going to pass those names into this loader bat. Okay, so last thing that we need to do to finish this all off is once you've gone through and you've done this for every single one of these games. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and use like Badlands just for the sake of this video, even though it doesn't really match. And then Cliffhanger, let's see here, we're going to go ahead and replace this. Okay, so let's say you've done this with every single one. It's got your path names and your home directories. Okay, last thing you want to do to try to make this nice and streamlined so that it doesn't matter where you move these files to, it'll always work. You want to go over here to where your frame file is at, and right there, starting right after your double quotes, go ahead and select the path up to just before that slash where the VLDP is. And you're going to go ahead and copy that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to replace and paste that command that we just copied and replace that with a period. And you're going to do replace all. Once you do that, you're going to notice that now every single one of these have been replaced with that period just before that slash on the VLDP. And your home directory has also changed, so it's just a period. Okay, this makes it so that it doesn't matter where you move these files to, it will work every time. Okay, so once you've done this, you've pretty much got everything laid out and ready to go. So now we can go ahead and save this. And we've got our Launchbox loaders and we've got our Launchbox batch file ready to go. All right, so now it's time to go ahead and bring up Launchbox and get those games imported. Okay, so now here's the part where we essentially go to that emulators folder and the Daphne where we did all this configuration, right? Remember I told you we're going to copy this entire emulators folder, and you're going to go to your Launchbox folder that has the main files, and you're going to paste it right here under the main directory. Okay, so your Launchbox file is here, and then here's that emulators Daphne that we created. Okay, so now let's go ahead and fire up Launchbox. Okay, since this is a brand new install, we're going to get this this lovely little window that comes up. We're also going to get this because nothing's ever been added. So we're not going to be using the wizard to do this. We're just going to go straight into manual mode. Okay, so first thing, go ahead and change your platform category over to the platform. All right, and then what we're going to do is go over to Tools. We're going to go over to Manage Platforms and create our platform for Daphne. So we're going to add and label this Daphne. Leave everything completely blank and hit OK. Now we've created the platform for Daphne with no games that are associated to it. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the emulator and tie that to that platform. So we're going to go to Manage, Tools, and then Manage Emulators. And then we're going to add a new emulator and call it Daphne. And then here under the application path, we're going to find that batch file that we created. So remember, we copied that emulators folder under the Daphne. So you're going to go to Emulators, Daphne, and then find that batch file, not the Daphne executable, which is normally what you would choose. So choose now your batch file. Okay. And then right here, this is kind of where it makes the magic happen is you've got this, use the file name without the path, so that now you've got essentially that batch file and then those dummy files, right, that we created with the name, and now it should work accordingly to what we're going to do when we import those ROMs. So now we've got this, and then go ahead and check this attempt to hide console window. This was kind of something very specific for Daphne that was created, and you want that. It makes it nice. So now go to associated platforms, double click here and label this Daphne because we created the platform, and choose that as a default emulator for that platform. Okay, hit OK. So now we've got our platform and we've got our emulator, and hit close. Now it's time to go ahead and bring the games in. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to go to Tools. We're going to import the ROM files. You're going to hit Next, and now you're going to add a folder and find that folder that we had under the emulators and Daphne, and there's that Launchbox underscore loaders folder that we created that's got all those dummy files, and you're going to hit OK. Now you're going to hit Next. You're going to find that Daphne platform that we just created, and you're going to scrape this as an arcade so that when it downloads all of the front artwork, it loads it appropriately. Okay, it should come up with the Daphne emulator, but if it doesn't, go ahead and select it. Go ahead, next. Leave the files in their current location. Search the games database so that we can get all the box art. Everything should be checked here except for this last cinematic theme. And the reason for that is we're going to use EMU movie files for all the videos on these games. So hit next. If you've got an EMU movie account that you've already programmed into Launchbox, it should look something essentially just like this. All right, what I want you guys to do for this particular platform is I want you to uncheck every single one of those boxes. Do not import from EMU movies, okay, from this particular window. You're going to do that through the FTP, and you're going to download all the video files. Okay, so make sure you don't check anything there. All right, and then over here under the custom options, all that I usually check is the game manual, and then hit next. All right, so now it's gone through that folder that's got all those dummy files that we created with their names, and it's essentially put the names of the games that it's going to import and search for. So the only thing that we need to fine tune on here is going to be this Mach 3, because the real name of the game actually has periods in between here as an acronym. If I did those here, it would actually affect the process of the importation, so it's just easier to do it here under the name of the game. Okay, so we've changed the name. I'm going to hit finish. And now Launchbox is going to go through, since this is the first time that it's been fired up. It's going to update its games database and essentially get all those IDs of all the front artwork and the 3D boxes updated. And then after this, it should start essentially downloading the games, as you can see here. All right, I'm not going to torture you guys in waiting for this to finish, so I'm going to pause this and then come back after everything has been imported. So hang on tight and we'll be right back. Okay guys, we are back, and as you can see, it shows that 17 games have been imported successfully, so we're going to go ahead and hit OK. As you can see, you've got box art for every single one of these games, and my preference is this is just the front box. My preference is actually the 3D boxes, excuse me. So it just tends to look, I think, a little bit cleaner. But there were actually some of these that I had to make some submissions personally to the database because they weren't showing up right, like this Road Blaster and right here into the Badlands, but they've been fixed. So everything should come in, really well. And here, this is pretty much it, guys. Like now, once this is in here, you're ready to play. You can right click this and hit play, or you can double click and be ready to go. Okay. Now, if you want to go the extra step, you can put in video files for every single one of these. All right. So the way that I have done it is I've got a account to EMU Movies. Guys, I highly suggest if you're going to be using Big Box to get an account for this. It's really not that expensive and it'll just make your Big Box look so much better. Okay, so I have a subscription. Here's one where you've got for a month you pay $20, and then every month after that is for $5. If you really want a better deal, from my perspective, you can pay $10 more, and now you've got a yearly subscription instead of just a monthly subscription for like 3 months for the same price. So now you've got a yearly subscription. And then if you want to go all out, of course, you can just do $60 and never have to pay another subscription, amount again. So, but regardless of the case, what we're going to do is we're going to use the EMU Movies FTP to download all the videos related to this Daphne platform. Okay, so I use FileZilla and I hook up to the FTP, and within there is a folder that is for Daphne. And when you go through and you get those, let me find that, you're going to get essentially a folder that's going to have all these video files named just like this. Okay, so what we basically need to do is we need to take all these files right here that you get from EMU Movies and change the names so that they match these that we've imported into Launchbox. Okay, so here's what I suggest is you can go ahead and essentially get all these video files, and what I would probably suggest is that we can go to the Launchbox folder that's got all your main files for Launchbox, go over to video, go to Daphne, and then create a new folder in here called theme. And within the theme folder, paste all of those video files, or you can just directly download them into this theme folder, whichever you prefer. Just make sure you have all your files within Daphne and then theme under the videos in Launchbox. Okay, now I'm going to leave again this batch file within the description of this video, and all it's going to do is if you're going to take that and you're going to download it and put it right here with all these videos. And once you've done that, just go ahead and double click on it. And what it's going to do is going to rename every single one of those video files to the names that we've put in here for the Launchbox. Okay, really cool. So if you can see Interstellar isn't capitalized here, and Badlands, if you actually refresh, everything will go right back to the way that it should be. Okay, so the cool part with this is once you've done this and essentially put it into this Video Daphne theme folder, if you go over here to your Launchbox, let's say we're going to pick Astron's Belt and we're going to right click and edit. When you go over here to this other tab, you're going to see that it automatically populated that video right into the game. So, and that's for every single one of these. If you go to ESH, go to other, you can see it's there too. Okay, very cool, right? So now this is totally ready to go, including for Big Box. All right, the last thing that you can do to take it up to another level is within the EMU Movies, you also have not only just the video files for the games, but you also have, let's go back into here in the downloads, you also have the video for the platform. So what you can do is you can go over to, you can go to EMU Movies, you can grab the video, and essentially where you place it is you go to the Launchbox folder, go under videos, and instead of Daphne now you go under platforms, and then just paste it there. Okay, and then now you're pretty much ready to go. And I want you guys to see this because, like I said, this is pretty much a front end. It's ready to go, and it is the free version of Launchbox. I actually have paid for a full Eternity license of Launchbox because I really like this and I want to support, the cause. And so I'm going to go ahead and load this so that we can fire up Big Box and you guys can see it. So we're going to go ahead and close this. let me get over here to the Launchbox folder for Daphne and grab my license file and throw it here into the main folder. And now we should be ready to go for being able to load BigBox. All right, so here is my Launchbox, and if we go up here to the left, we can fire up BigBox. Let me go ahead and minimize some of these things here. So you can see BigBox is starting to load. And just give it a few seconds. Now it's starting to load, as you can see. This is the default theme that comes with BigBox, and there's just a bazillion different kind of themes. Again, this is just the default. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick little change here to that theme. And we're going to change that to the critical zone. Go back out, go back. Okay. The other thing I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to go ahead and change the button for the view so that we can actually see that. Let's see here if I can find it. I think I just saw it. Here we go. I'm going to go ahead and just create a quick button right here. Oh, sorry, that's for the controllers. I realized I need to go to the keyboard. Sorry about that. Go to switch view, Q. All right. And then I'm going to go ahead and enable the mouse so that you guys can see the pointer here as I'm moving it. You can see my mouse pointing right now, so that as I'm talking about this, you can see. Okay, so essentially we're going to go back to the BigBox, right? So you saw this. This was the default screen. Well, if I hit that Q button, look at what happens here. Now you can see that the views are actually changing, right? You've got the clear logo. Here's that platform video that we put in. And then here's the description of some of these things that have been put in for the games, right? If I hit the Q again, it's going to just start cycling through different views, right? So you can see that here's that platform video, and everything just kind of went away. You can hit it again, changes, right? So this is really awesome, right? You can just completely change the whole look of it. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave it right here. I'm going to go into Daphne. And now you can see here's the games that we put in there, right? So if I go through, again, I hit the Q. Now we're going to change. You can see now here's all the clear logos. Here's that theme video with the box art in the front and description. You can hit Q again. Now we've got the clear logos, but now here's that platform video. This is generally how I've got my arcade cabinet set up, where I've got just the clear logos and then the themes inside of there. So I can essentially just go through and select it. Right? This is what totally makes everything shine, right? It looks really good. Okay, so it's just to give you an idea, you know, of everything go through. And like I said, I can just go through and then essentially hit the enter key and hit play, and then we're ready to go. All right, guys. So this is pretty much, I think, everything we've covered. Let me just make sure. We covered all the box. Let me fire up Launchbox real quick. We covered up everything in Launchbox. We've imported it. We talked about all the Launchbox file, the dummy files. So, yep, I think this is pretty much it, guys. This will conclude this video. Like I said, it's just to make everything as streamlined and as easy as possible to be able to throw it into Launchbox. I'll leave links to all these batch files and folders and everything that I've created for you guys, so you can make it nice and easy. You don't have to go through the extra work. So I hope that this video really makes things easier for you guys wanting to do this, and it really beneficial for you. Really appreciate your time and watching this, and hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much, and have a good one.